Hello my dear students, I hope you all are doing good. So today we are here again to continue with the chapter Population Dynamics, that is chapter 2 of your book. Today's topics of the chapter would be population growth. As we already have discussed in this chapter that how populations are affected from one place to another, we get to understand that people everywhere is not in the same number. But how does this number varies, or why there are places experiencing heavy populations or some places they have very less population? We already discussed in terms of the factors that affects the population. Today let us talk about the population growth in one particular place. So let us first know what is population growth. Population growth is, as the name itself suggests, the term itself suggests, growth means to increase. So here population growth means increase in number of population in a given area or a given geographical region, where it is mostly because of high birth rate and migration. So these are the two major factors that affects the increase in the number of population in a place. There is even a formula that can help us calculate the population growth, and the formula is birth rate plus immigration minus death rate plus emigration. These terms that we have used here in the formula, now let us discuss them as one by one. As we already said that one of the factor is because of the birth rate and death rate, obviously it comes, and then the next factor is migration. So let us discuss those factors, what they are. So what is birth rate? Birth rate is a number of live birth per 1,000 person per year. That means in 1 year, how many children are born, but not the dead fetus or not the dead child, but the alive birth is what we account in terms of birth rate. While in death rate, what do we see is the number of deaths per 1,000 per person year. It means that in a year, how many people die in terms of the thousands of numbers, that is what is calculated as the death rate. Now, when we say birth rate and death rate, the difference between the two gives us the natural growth rate. That means in a place, the birth rate and the death rate affects the population. So here, if we come to know the difference between death rate and birth rate, where in case if birth rate is high and death rate is low, it is obvious that the natural growth rate is high. Or in case if death rate is high and birth rate is low, that means in terms of natural growth rate that we see that the population of that particular place is less or decreasing rather than increasing. So what remains a major factor is if the birth rate is high, then there is a certainty that the population of a place increases in number. So this is the first factor that affects the population of a place in terms of population growth. The second factor is migration. See, migration is what? It is the movement of people from one place to another or from one country to another. Say for example, you are in India or we live in India, but you got an opportunity to go to United States and there you live for 5 years. That means you have migrated from India to United States now for 5 years. So you are migrating now. This is a technical term that we generally use as migration, movement of people from one place to another or one country to another. Now migration is of two types, or it takes place in two ways. One, when we move out of the country. A second, when someone enters the country. Like I said that we are Indians and we live in India, but say like we got an opportunity to go to United States and we moved out of the country, that is we moved out of India. In that case, the process of migration that takes place is emigration, that is movement of people out of the country, and the person who moves out of the country is known as immigrant. But in next case, say like an American got an opportunity to come to India. We are already here in India. So that American comes to India. That means he is coming to our country. There is an inward movement or movement into a country. So to that is what we call immigration. Movement of people into a country, that is immigrant. Now there is a third type of movement or a third forms that we see is a refugee. A refugee is a person who has moved out of his country but does not have a particular destination to go to. They don't have the host country where they go and take exile of. They take shelter in that particular country. Sorry, not exile. So in this case, what happens is, such a person who leaves his country but has no new home or no destined country to go to, such a person is known as a refugee. That means he does not have a permanent place to go to. He may remain, so like if one person moves from the other country and comes to India, he may remain in India for a year or so and thereafter again keeps moving. But there is no permanent residency of that particular person in this country. So such a person is known as refugee. Now, because of the varying growth rate, or a place may be having high growth rate while other places may be having low growth rate. So in that case, what we see in a place is either the place gets overpopulated, that means the population becomes very high, or the population remains as underpopulated region in a particular place. That is what we are talking about. So in that case, what we see, underpopulation is another concern. So let us discuss what is overpopulation and what is underpopulation. Overpopulation. First, the term over means excess here. Excess of what? We are discussing population. Population in form of humans. So the person living in one particular region, when the number exceeds beyond the available resource, that is to what we call overpopulation. That means in a place, if the number of people is very high and the available resource to use is very less, in that case we call it overpopulation. So what causes overpopulation? Advanced medical facilities leads to lower death rate. That means advanced medical facilities nowadays, we see that technology has so raised high the bar that every disease has a cure. So that cure is leading people to live for more lives. So this is the reason why we say advanced medical facilities, high fertility and low mortality. That means high birth rate but the death rate is less. Technological advancement leading to obviously advanced medical facilities, and there are more other facilities that comes with the technologies. And then other things, other cases are industrialization, urbanization and migration. In any place, if there are large number of movement because of good number of industries formed in that place, so that also leads to overpopulation of the place. What is an impact? There is a great impact of overpopulation in one particular place. Impact in case of resources that we see, which is already less in amount, or the availability of resources already less because of overpopulated region. Again, those very number of population uses the resources in excess, leading to its depletion. And what happens? Ultimately, the natural as well as the man-made resources gets lessened in their number, or most of the natural resources gets endangered because of the depletion. And ultimately, with the natural resources mostly being depleted, what happens is it leads to high amount of population level to raise high, and then again come in turn as a bad phase towards the human population itself. Point number 2, what we have is rise in unemployment. When we have large number of people, obviously unemployment increases because every people cannot be satisfied with their job opportunities. And everywhere job opportunities cannot be created because whatever was available is already been occupied by the available people living in that particular place. So unemployment ultimately leads to poverty. So that means it leads to very low standard of living. Then again, unemployment leads to what? High crime rate. Because people will need something to earn, or people will need something to live their life. And what is it provide to them is employment. But in this case, we have unemployment in large scale. So this ultimately leads to high crime rate. Large number of population or people means it will be very crowded, and hence sanitization will be not of the better level, which will ultimately lead to poor health. And also in such places, where large number of population means there will be a lot fluctuations in the demands and supply of a commodity or a resource, which leads to high cost of living. But in case of underpopulation, where we see that the available resource is much more than that of the population living in that particular place. That means number of person is less, living in that particular region is less than the available resource. So what is the cause usually? Low fertility, that means low birth rate, and high mortality, that is high death rate. Then emigration, people moving out of the country, war, political conflicts and famine, these all leads to higher death rate. So which results in low population to be available in this particular place. The only disadvantage of this underpopulation is what? The lack of human resources. Lack of human resources or a manpower to work or to perform some activities is what is its greatest disadvantage. But what are the advantages if we see? Advantages is, as we already discussed, that resources are plenty in number, so there will be no shortage of resources. Low pollution in fact, lower crime rate, job opportunities will be high, and sanitization will be also very good than as compared to the overpopulated region. So these are the topics to be discussed today, discussed today. I hope you'll get something to learn from this. You all have a good time and stay safe. Thank you very much, class.